Hello. So today I'm going to be covering a build of mine that I did. Now the objective of this build was to complete a full tier village within 24 hours. Now I'll admit beforehand that I went over that limit by a couple of hours. That is only because after I woke up in the morning I forgot that I was actually building this village, so I neglected to place a whole bunch of instant buildings beforehand that I needed to place in order to complete it within the predefined time span. So for all intents and purposes, this should have been a 24-hour build, and I will be billing it as such. Now, to get something out of the way right at the beginning, you're going to need cards if you wish to do this. Now, it should also be noted, I did this in UK World 1, where I have all of my researches completed. So relevant technologies such as tools, which reduces the resource cost of each building, and architecture, which reduces build times, were both playing a very large factor in this. If you don't have either of those research branches maxed out, your results are likely to vary rather significantly from the results that I have experienced. You're likely going to have to play more instant buildings because you're not going to be able to complete as much simply building with advanced construction cards in play. So I thought that to start us out and to give you sort of an overall idea of the cards that you'll need to follow along in what I'm doing in this video, I'd list the cards right up here on the screen. So the cards you absolutely need to have in the first place. Number one is Advanced Construction. Now this allows your buildings to be constructed much quicker. It is a gold rank card, and it's going to cost you 45 card points. If you get it in a card pack, that's another issue entirely. Now when I completed this build, I used 3 of these, although if I had played a couple more instant building cards, I would have gotten away with using 2. It should be noted that while advanced construction cards can be bought with card points, instant building cards cannot. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's much better to ultimately spend an extra advanced construction card and build a little bit longer than to have to spend those very rare at times instant building cards. The other needed card, in addition to advanced construction and a bunch of instant building cards depending upon the buildings you're interested in placing for free, is the night working card, and this will allow you to instantly complete buildings under construction. And much like the instant building card, you cannot actually purchase the night working card. You may notice that right here on the screen, the night working card has the 11 symbol on it. That was a mistake. It was simply because I took a picture of it straight from my inventory where I have 11 of them. I hope that's not a little bit too misleading. But both night working and instant buildings, they're essentially going to complete the same role, with the exception that night working is going to give you more flexibility to essentially instant build any building you place down, although you're going to have to pay a resource cost, but you're going to really be allowed to choose which building you want completed instantly. With instant buildings, it's a lot more potluck involved. For me anyway, most of the instant building cards that I've got have been for apple orchards, dairy farms, woodcutters' huts, and stone quarries. So those are the lowest priority buildings you have to remember when actually placing buildings in your village. You want to focus on building high quality buildings from the start when build times are still low, and then using your instant building cards to place a whole lot of those cheap buildings. You're not going to be saving any resources because of this, but it's much more likely that you're going to actually have instant building cards in those very 4 basic types that I just mentioned. And in addition to these 3 very essential cards needed to complete a full tier village within 24 hours, you could accentuate your build time with cards such as Carters, which allows your traders to move faster across the map. This means you'll be able to buy goods from a market much more quickly. Trade caravans, same thing. Trade caravans allows you to carry more goods to and from the market. Horse breeding allows your scouts to move quicker across the map, and basic scavenging allows scouts to carry more goods from resource piles. We have the production cards. This is going to be increasing some of your base productions, such as food. If you don't buy food, you can simply place a couple of apple orchards and dairy farms early on, and then play the relevant production increasing cards to allow yourself to produce enough food to sustain a growing population, because we're going to end up with over 200 population within one day by the time this is over, and most of those peasants are going to be homegrown. The last card is villagers. Now, at the very beginning of your build, getting a villagers card means you won't actually have to wait too long to build all the merchants you're going to need to mass buy the goods that you're going to be using to build this village. Lastly is the premium token. This comes in very handy if you're not going to be around the game a whole lot during the time when you're doing this. You can simply queue up a whole bunch of buildings once you get past maybe that 5-minute mark, and then walk away and do whatever you need to do. Okay, with that out of the way, let's actually jump into the video that I did for this. Now, I did edit this down significantly. The footage here is taken from several hours and condensed into a simple 13-minute, well, almost 14-minute video. Okay, so getting started here, I went ahead and bought a lowland village, and then I played a premium token. As you can see, the report was right there. For the lowland village, here I'm building my village. I placed a stockpile, the granary. Of course, I put an advanced construction card into play, so it's going to reduce my building times. Make sure to build a castle so you can have that. You're not going to be taking that hit from negative popularity due to castle. Now I'm going to start building some markets right away. It's important you get your markets up early, because you only have so much stone and wood to start off with in your village, and if you go over that, you're going to actually have to buy wood via cards unless you have other villages that send it from. Right there you can see I added some peasants. The reason I added peasants is because I don't have time to wait for them to come, so I called in villagers with the card right away, and I made 20 of them. Now I can actually buy and sell. I was able to get enough for the merchants. I only have 5 merchants right now, and as you can see here, the markets don't have a whole lot of goods in them, but that was just a local market. It was enough to get me started, and we'll go on from there. Now I'm searching around, getting different markets, and I understand that while I have a premium token in play, I didn't particularly use it. And once I did realize I could use the advanced trade options, I don't usually use premium tokens. Once I did realize that I could use those advanced trade options, there weren't a whole lot of parishes anymore with goods within that advanced trade range, so I was having to look outside that anyway. Here you can see I'm building up a lot of hovels. Now this is debatable whether you want to do hovels or if you want to focus on a little bit more markets. I personally wanted to grow my population quickly as possible, and I'm going to be placing as many hovels until I have them placed all down. It really depends on the resources I have at hand. Okay. I'm increasing the taxes, or the tiv that I'm paying out to my peasants right there to make sure they're coming in faster. Continuing the trading, of course. You want to make sure you have enough stone and wood to actually build buildings. You're going to need quite a bit of it. I'm placing more markets here because this is going to allow me to mass buy, and it means I won't have to wait as long. Placing an inn and some breweries. Now this is just a couple of breweries. I'm going to be playing the production cards a little bit later on to make sure that I have enough food to sustain my population up to 200 until I can use cards to place more free buildings. So I'm up to 20 merchants now, still buying and selling. I didn't trade with any of my other villages. I want to make that just clear. I have other villages on this map. I did not trade with any of them to do this. So, I mean, I wanted to keep it separated from those in case you were just starting out new on a map. You would understand what it would be like. It would give you a better idea. Otherwise, I could have just sent all these goods from other villages. It's optional. You know, if you have other villages, do that. Okay, right there I played my second villagers card. This time I was only for 10 villagers, and that was to allow me to recruit a few more additional merchants while I still didn't have enough peasants coming in on their own generically. Oh, so here I finally realized that I actually have the option to use the advanced trade options, and I used that a little bit longer. Going into cards, getting 10 more villagers. Now those villagers cards, you can't just you can go out and buy them, but I'm not exactly sure you need to. It's optional depending upon how fast you want to grow here. Placing more markets, of course. I didn't place them all. I didn't find the need to. Some players have recommended that you place them all. And here I'm placing some entertainment buildings. It should be noted that the entertainment buildings I placed only have a total of 5 popularity. Here I'm buying some meat, some additional food. Hired some scouts, and now I'm going to play the relevant scouting cards to make sure that I can pick up a little bit extra off the map. This was completely unnecessary on my part, but if you're in a new world, for example, where you don't have any money and the goods are at very high premiums, this could be an alternative strategy for you to pick up a lot of those very basic goods. Now, the speeds you see on the map are not actually representative of real game speeds. Number one, I'm in the 4th age, and number two, I actually speeded that footage up, so don't expect your scouts and merchants to be going that fast. Buying more goods, as you can see right here, I'm starting to place the religious buildings, the cathedral, and I'm going to be placing the churches and the chapels. Some people omit the chapels, but I personally think they're, faith points are a limited resource, and for the most part, if I have the ability, I'll build all of them. Generally, I don't favor any other buildings over faith point buildings because it is one of the most valuable resources in the game. Here we go again, buying some more stone, placing more entertainment buildings. You can see I have a pretty good foundation here. Starting off with some weapon production, I'm placing the catapult guild because that's what I'm going to be focusing on. Right here you can see now I'm playing the production cards for cheese, ale, and apples. Still buying more resources, and I'm going to be focusing on weapon workshops in this build because they are the ones that are difficult to get instant cards for. So I have to spend night build cards on it otherwise. You might be a little bit disappointed with the end game part of this video because I make some choices that are merely convenient rather than optimal, but we will get into that later. Still scouting out food and the like. I mean, if you're scouting out plenty of food, you probably don't need production cards. I'm just trying to keep all bases covered right here. So as you can see, I'm using the scouts to get food. If you didn't have production cards, you didn't want to spend additional card points on them, whatever, you might be able to just survive right off the land. If you had fast enough scouts, you can get a lot of stuff right off the land when you have your scouts carded up. Of course, you actually have to be active while you're doing that, but I mean, obviously you're building anyway, so during those first few hours when the build times are low, you're going to be there anyway. Might as well do it. Now, right there, I sent the monk. That was simply to cure some disease in my parish. Yours may vary. I did what I had to do. Once again, you might have noticed there, I'm placing more weapons workshops. And in here, I'm actually buying some iron rather than producing it, although I will be building some iron mines a little bit later. I just wanted to get a jump start on producing weapons as soon as possible, because likely you're probably going to want to jump in and produce enough weapons to actually start taking over new villages next to you and the like. So that's why I focused on weapons. Focusing on weapons is always good, especially in later ages where you actually can't buy them from the market anymore. It's really the only viable strategy now is to actually build them yourself or pillage them from other players. Now, right here you can see is another example of gameplay that was speeded up. Those scouts and merchants weren't actually going that fast. Village overview, I'm simply pointing to the number of buildings I have in my village. You might want to keep an eye on that in later ones because you need about 106 buildings to actually have a full tier village. Just moving the hovels here a little bit, I want to place some gilded statues. I'm going to place the best passive honor statues down. So you're going to have a good amount of passive generating honor. In addition, you can, it's really keeping all the players' options open is what I'm going for. Nothing too specialized, very generic, just to give players an idea of what it would look like, and they can customize it from there. Continuing on with scouting around the map, buying resources. This is a lot of what you will be doing, and placing buildings, when it's time to do so. Like I said, this took place over about 6 hours. I have to record and condense this footage down. So that took about 3.5 hours just to cut all this stuff down. There are a lot of cuts right here. Building more gilded statues. It's always good. And I'll also be building the flower beds a little bit later on. So those very two top ones. I haven't built any justice buildings, but I covered that in another video. Why I just generally don't really focus much on justice buildings. If you're hardcore out for passive honor, go for it. But personally, I just rather keep the extra popularity. So right there are the formal gardens that I'm placing down, and you can see build times are increasing a little bit. This is when my first construction card ran out, my advanced construction, so I played a second one. You're not actually going to see me play the third one because I accidentally forgot to hit record when I was doing that. But yeah, I played 3 ultimately in this build. So placed the chapels, placed both churches and the cathedral, and once again moving back to more of the weapons workshops. Right there on the map you just saw back there was an image of the current tier of my village for players who are interested in seeing how it was progressing visually on the map, because that's what I'm basing this off of. I placed a couple of woodcutters huts, a stone quarry, and an iron mine. This is debatable whether or not you want to do this, because like I said, those are the cheapest buildings usually. You can see the village is a little bit bigger there, that icon. Those are usually the cheapest buildings when it comes to instant carting them in, and you'll probably want to do that instead. I'm not sure why I put that there again. That's the same image of it. Moving on, we have more. Yes, here's where I rename my village, just so you can tell where it is in the actual list of villages. That's a rather snarky name for it, but yeah, now you can tell it's about the 5th one down. So to give you an idea, you can pause it and then look at the number of buildings I have. There's no real reason for me to leave that on there too long. I started diversifying my food types a little bit. You don't need to do that. As a matter of fact, given the instant cards that I have available, mostly dairy farms and apple orchards, you're much better off just sticking with the one food type. Or 2 food types, cheese and apples. Yeah, I ended up building... If I'd put those buildings that I put stone and wood towards weapon workshops, you'd see quite a few more weapon workshops. Here I'm going to start playing night working cards. It's really a waste the way I did it right here, because I'm just using them to complete buildings that I could have instant carded in. So that was not efficient at all, and I would recommend you only use that on buildings that have high unlikelihood of actually dropping, such as weapon workshops. But yeah, I ended up doing that. Not a good idea, but you can learn from my mistakes. Now this is where I probably start. Yes, this is where I start actually dropping in instant buildings, and they'll all build within 3 seconds, and they don't actually cost any resources to place down. So, you don't have to worry about having any resources in your village at all. If you have a lot of instant building cards, you can just card up in a top tier village pretty much as fast as you can play these instant building cards. But, it takes a while to get all these cards, and I probably wasted a few carding up this village for no reason except the tutorial. But, a lot of other players hopefully can learn from this, so it's not a waste. That's the way I view it anyway. You can see the village's tier is growing a little bit more. There's a workshop behind it now, and we'll hover off to the one end of it. Now I'll start placing apple orchards. And as you can see from that screen right there, I actually have quite a few apple orchards. So you're going to see a lot more of those being placed down. And that's what I meant when I said probably not optimal, but it was definitely convenient, because I had all these apple orchard cards I wasn't going to use anyway. And obviously, you probably want to play something a little bit more constructive in there. So go for night working cards, maybe build more. You can see the village is higher tier now. Maybe build more weapons workshops, because those seem to be high priority. Or build banqueting. I've seen a lot of players also recommend placing banqueting down, with especially in the early game, or using the night working cards to instantly bring them in. Village tier continues to increase. I take a look. I have 102 buildings, I think. Placing a few more instant buildings. This time I'm going for more stone quarries. As you can see, the village itself is taking shape quite nicely. And remember, this would easily have been done within one day if I had actually remembered. So I went over it by a couple of hours. If you're paying attention to the time in the lower right corner, you can see my desktop, just so you know that I'm not really fudging on any numbers here. This is how I did it. You can also see the day up on the top, and it pretty much is doing it. I'm going to place a whole lot of queued buildings here. The reason you can queue buildings in and your village tier will increase, even though they haven't actually completed building yet. So I showed you the castle, showed you all the cards I used kind of right there. Full village tier should have been within 24 hours, marked 26, but it would have been, like I said before. And a total of 114 buildings in that village. 60 popularity, 35 merchants. Here I'm going to turn up my food a little bit, start taxing my peasants a little bit more, up to 7,000. It's a pretty decent amount of gold per day. You're not going to really get any complaints there. And that pretty much sums it up. I hope you found this informative, but if you have any questions or suggestions, please do leave a comment in the comment section below this video. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.
Strong. begun.